All right, folks, we are back. Welcome on back here this morning, this October 10th, shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Josh Levitan. Welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Feels good to be back. Feels good to sound like my normal self, back in my normal saddle. Great to see Chuck, Jeff, Leda, Lawrence, Charles, Ray, and had Kathleen before, Egan, Gary, Barbara, Mark, Lewis, full house. Joining us inside our live trading room, joining us back on social media, perhaps otherwise, on YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, etc. All of our social media streams at Cyber Trading U. Look to follow, subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend. And with that, there is so much to talk about today, folks. So obviously, with the market moving back on up once again today. Yesterday, we had a strong run up, breaking over 430. Once again today, another 3-point move on the SPY. I have AMC on the screen. I'm in it right now. I actually jumped in right before we started Traders Talk. If you were inside our live trading room, you saw me pull the trigger right there. Is on a half size compared to what I'm normally doing, at least from this morning here. A lot to talk about. So bear with me. We're going to move around quick across this 60-minute presentation. So again, if you're joining us on social media, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, etc., you want to get the full rendition of this workshop, all of the recordings, all of the education. Actually, let me just get the QR code up right now. A little slacking there perhaps, but scan the QR code coming up just on the top left of that stream. Make sure you join us and all of our students here. But AMC is moving on up right now. Really quick question for all of us on YouTube as well, collectively, open house here. What's my next resistance? Looking at this simple 1-minute chart, looking at the lines I took the time to plot early this morning. What seems to be my next resistance? Currently, it's at 1027 right now, the price. So what's our next resistance? We got Kat saying 1058. Yeah, it's 1055, the price there. If it's tiny font there, that 5 looking like an 8, 1055, that price, that blue dashed line, of course, up top there. Why? How? Why do I have so much confidence? Well, it all draws back to yesterday, actually. And as this moves up, I may look to have to close out this position if this gets there sooner rather than later. But, hey, if you were inside our live trading room yesterday, you know that we were following AMC for a good portion of the day. We're following it back from Friday last week even. So that was actually really where we started the run up. Now, I have a bunch of lines on this chart. Bear with me. I'll explain a couple of them as we go. But long story short with this AMC trade is that it popped at the open yesterday, pulled back, became a pretty ugly trade afterwards, topped off very early on after the market opened up. So, we ended up moving on from it at least after it initially pulled back. Now, I'm on a coaching call with one of our students heading into the mid-morning, and it was beginning to slingshot back up. Well, this level here, this dashed red line, this was Friday's close price, the closing bell print from Friday. From the end of last week, it was a huge transaction. And given how much AMC ran from Friday, what if? What if this stock begins to break over this level? What if this stock begins to build support over this level? That's what allows me to have the confidence to enter a trade. So as it began to move up here, I said to my student, I think this could be a good opportunity. Now, I bring this up because actually, hey, this student, much like probably the majority of the market, quite fearful with what's happening out there, right? Obviously, if you're under a rock, everything happening in Israel, around Israel, between Israel and Hamas, and not just that, there's other wars out there too, obviously still situating Russia and Ukraine. There's something with Serbia and Kosovo coming out, happening right now as we're talking. There's a lot going on out there in the world. And if you are fearful of a drop-off, another recession, whatever it may be, then you're not going to be as confident to jump into a trade long. You're not going to be as confident to buy, right? Understandable. I get it. But this is where I have to say to students joining us here, like Chuck, Jeff, Leda, Kathleen, Grant, Charles, a litany of our students here. I could shout you out. Barbara, Ray, Lawrence, Mark, Sydney, all of our students here joining us actually in the chat. These are students that have been with us for months, if not years. Perhaps a couple of us could say decades, right? Actually, I'm on year 10 right now as of this week. So it is to say that we've been through the motions before. We've seen the market push up when we don't expect it to. And we should learn at least what happens or how we should look to react when we're initially wrong. Oh, shit, the market's not dropping off. Oh, shoot, we're getting a rebound. Well, of course, you could sit there and do nothing. Hey, you're not going to lose money, right? Not jumping in, but you're wasting your time if you're just watching the market and you have no intent to enter a trade. So, even if you're short on a position and it pops back up, it takes you out. Okay, well, over time, I actually learned to begin to spin my sentiment and say, you know what? Okay, maybe this isn't dropping off and breaking a lower low. Oh, it's making a higher low. Oh, it's breaking back over this level. What if? So, we go through this in class. It's not as easy to just apply right out the gate. It takes a little time, a couple months, right? But the more that you're with us, you begin to realize. So at first, I jumped into this position, right place, wrong time. It pulled back, right? If we're expecting such a big move from this big level, then we should see it sooner than later. So it ended up popping at first. It failed to hold support, stopped me out pretty quickly after. It was like as I was on the call with the guy. So, he was saying like, hey, I'll bet you lunch, like it's not going to pop. All right, he was right there. I mean, I was prepared to own lunch. Well, over time across the early afternoon, it stormed back up. And, hey, perhaps you could even say I could have jumped in off this level. I took the time to plot. That I'm not looking to do. I mean, that's making a lower low. It's pulling back. That doesn't look healthy right there. So granted, it did bounce ultimately from around that price. But myself, I felt more confident in the break over this big level here, Friday's close price. And with that, once it rebroke it heading into the mid-afternoon, easy to say, but it made a big move shortly after. So how about this really quick? I actually replotted my levels heading into this morning. So bear with me a quick second. What's my top line up there right now? For Grant, Kath, and all of our students, what's our top resistance line up there? Obviously, it broke over the red line heading into 2 o'clock where my cursor is, moving on up and up and up and up. 986, right? 986, that dash. It's a skinny line, but hey, why? Let's kind of put ourselves in like a 5-year-old, like a 6-year-old. Why? You got to ask that question all the time. Why? Well, remember, we ended up following back from Friday last week. All right. Now I'm going to do something that I don't normally have the chance to show because I can't always do this for every stock. And I don't always keep my computer running over the weekend here. But I ended up leaving my computer running over this weekend, and I have like a ton of data on AMC that I could share with you. So this is actually dating back from Thursday of last week on the 5th. And you take a look, it didn't really do a whole much of anything on Thursday the 5th, but we had a resistance at $9. All right. Well, above that, 985, 986. And at the time, let's get the full amount here. It was about 28,000 shares. About 28,000 shares at 985 right there. That's all the way back from Thursday. Now you go to Friday's trading, which is right here. Moving on to Friday's trading, the 6th. Well, it looks pretty interesting because also at 985 for the majority of the day, you had a pretty big level out there, big sell order out there. It was about 28,000 shares, pretty much the same size. So talk about consistency, right? Now there's other levels here at 1026, here at 1015, obviously at the hold number, decade number, $10. But in terms of consistency, that order was out there all of Thursday and now most of Friday for hours on end. So I find good reliability in that, right? The more an order is sticking out there, for a long period of time, I'm going to have faith in that as a big level. Now, in this case, with it breaking over this first big level for me, 935, 936, well, I'm expecting a big move from this price. So to me, 14, 15 cents is not really a big move for a $9, $10 stock, let alone something that could be as volatile, that has wings as much as AMC can have. This stock has made a huge run in the past for us, and it's coming off actually a reverse stock split. So that's what could make it a little volatile here in the situation, and from the end of last week as it was. So again, I'm not looking for like that 12 or 14 cent gain. If it pulls back and it like really tanks here, then I'll take a break even, or even like take like a -2, -1. But like, it might sound greedy, but it's how we teach it in class. It's how we teach it here in Traders Talk every week. When a stock breaks through a big level, we're looking for a big move shortly after. So I was looking for this to move over this 950 and go higher. Well, over time, 986 was my target. That's where we had that iceberg. And It was a perfect hit. It was a direct hit right there. I was saying it in the chat board in the afternoon on Friday. I was actually going food shopping. I came back by like 2:45, like 3 o'clock, and then, or before that, actually, like 2:30ish. And as it was moving on up, I said, all right, well, 986 is going to be our target heading into the close. So in and out, I was kind of like in my fridge, like kind of unpacking and, seeing it inch on up and up and up. I said, all right, well, may as well just sell underneath there. I'm not going to hold it overnight. Maybe I could have, should have, but that's not the intent of the trade to begin with. So, it was to get out by the end of the day, or at least where the next big level was. And easy to say looking at the chart, but it's just according to a game plan. It's according to, what we go through each and every day here. But hey, how about this? Really quick question, because this will take us to where we want to get to for right now on AMC, but across the board on a bunch of other trades. Again, it was PLTR that popped today. It was IO and Q that popped today. We had Tesla that popped today. I want to go over that possibly. But let me ask us, who here inside our live trading room, I want full participation here, please. Who here after the, or let me rephrase, who here within the first 15 minutes of the market open today from 9:30 to 9:45, who here in that time took a trade? If you took a trade in the first 15 minutes of the market open from 9:30 to 9:45, just on anything, let me know. Just, it doesn't matter which one, doesn't matter how many, just let me know, did you trade the first 15 minutes of the market open today? Bunch of us, rightfully so, right? Primetime trading is from 9:35 to like 10:15, 10:30. So, a bunch of us, Ryan, Kathleen, Lawrence, Brian, Don, Gary, Ray, Larry, Mark says no. Sorry, Mark. Going down fast there. Chuck, Sid, Richard, Aaron, George, Joyce. Got a bunch of us, right? For those of us that wrote yes, I'd like to imagine that you were at your desk, at your trading desk, having your platform up and running, your eyes glued to your screen, certainly by the time Fausto did the morning meeting at 9 a.m., right? Now, I'm certain, like, more of us even were at their desk at like 8 o'clock Eastern time or even 8:30 Eastern time, where you have plenty of time to prep up your levels. You know where I'm getting to now. You know where I'm getting to. I trapped you. So that's where I say from 8:30, at least, if you're at your desk 8:30 Eastern time, there is no excuse. If there's a stock that you are interested in following, even if it's something that, is just kind of flat at first, it's like a side list stock, you say, okay, this could be one of my 2 or 3 stocks I'll look to follow here for the market open for the first 30, 45 minutes of the day. Even if it doesn't make that big pop at first, well, hey, even if it pulls back, you could find a slingshot. You could find a higher low. You could find a breakout later on. So as long as there's something that is really fancying you, like a volatile stock that you either do well on day to day, or a stock that clearly in pre-market is making a move, then you have all the time in the world to plot these levels, to go back on level 3 and level 4 otherwise, and figure out where the big iceberg orders are. Let me ask us really quick, who here has level 4? Doesn't matter if it's the main version or the Thinkorswim version. Let me know. Doesn't matter which one, just do you have level 4? Book map, whether on Thinkorswim or the main version. Bunch of us, ton of us do, right? Aaron, John, Charles, Mark, Larry, Sid, Gary, Barbara, Anna, I think before. I'm losing all my chat right now. Will, who I'm going to talk to after Traders Talk, looking forward to it. He hasn't. And yeah, so that's where I say, hey, you have the chance to plot these levels. And that is where for this morning, well, on AMC in particular, this was one of my 2 or 3 stocks I took the time to plot. I can't do this for, every stock out there. I can't do this for, 8, 10 different stocks. I can only do it for 2 or 3 at most. And I'll tell you what, after the last week that I had with like catching strep throat and COVID together, it's been a wild week and a half for myself. It feels good to be back in my saddle. And it's like actually something I enjoy doing. So, this morning felt great getting my level set on AMC again, on AMD, which we'll, go into, and then a couple more. And like I said, PLTR, IO and Q, Tesla if we got time. So let's even go back to yesterday as it ran up. Well, let me ask you here really quick, because this will kind of give us our answer to today's chart. Is there anything that stands out to you looking at this heat map here? just looking at the heat map in particular. I know sometimes I'll ask about the columns and some of the spikes and whatever. Just focus on the heat map in particular. Is there anything that sticks out there? Ryan and Mark both saying 10:55, right? Yeah, and it was out there since 10 o'clock in the morning yesterday. It was a 102,000 share order out there, and it was out there for basically the whole day, right? From 10 o'clock onward. So talk about reliability and consistency. The longer an order's out there, the more I could trust it and say, oh, that's right. Yeah, that huge iceberg order from yesterday, right? So, this was something I took the time to recognize yesterday. And from there, I made sure that I didn't forget it. Right now on this trade, it's pulling back on me. So I do have my stop set on this just if it pulls back to break even. So going into this trade, that's kind of what I was saying. So, right here, basically, I need to see this hold right here. Otherwise, should be taking me out here soon. It's unfortunate, but if it ends up holding here, then we're still fine. But I do have a target for 10:55 for later today. The issue is it broke over an order that popped up here at 10:18, and now I was looking for that to be support. It just pulled back below there, and now I need this, which is where I got in from right here at 10:11 to be my support line now, which doesn't seem like it wants to be. But hey, if we end up getting a higher low later on, or if this even holds from where it's at right now, then, there's a chance. So it's all about the opportunity, at least. It's what led me to jump in the afternoon yesterday. There we go. It actually just took me out right there. You can see it took me out right there. Fun. Hey, I'll draw a line right now at 10:18. And if it ends up breaking back above that, then game on. Same trade. I'll look to take just over 10:18. Plot a new level there. All right, so AMC was a nice trade yesterday into this morning. Still, I think has a chance to be a great trade heading into this afternoon. We'll check in with the SPY, see if it's making any big drop. It looks like the SPY is still rocketing on up, actually, consolidating the last 3 or 4 minutes. But, otherwise, let's go to a stock that I didn't take the time to plot, but a stock that I know a few of us actually were following from earlier today, Tesla. We'll just jump ahead to Tesla actually next. So I want to do this one next because I don't have any recognition of where the levels were or are currently. Captain Hindsight comment here. Hey, it popped at the open, moved up to 266 just about. It pulled back here, broke higher. If trading was that easy, none of us would have a need to be here, myself included. Let's just shoot straight. So that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is saying, where were the best levels that one could have entered off of? If you were really following Tesla in pre-market, it's one that you do well on consistently, and you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to follow Tesla today, maybe buy the calls on it off of 260 or whatever price you look at, 265 maybe. Maybe take the option on it, like I said, then you need to prep up the stock chart. So I'll tell you what, I don't even have Tesla on Bookmap here. So you're going to get a raw reaction right now. I don't know where any of the levels are or were. I assume certainly one thing actually out the gate is pretty much every $5 for Tesla, you're going to find a pretty strong level to keep an eye on. So again, we know it popped at the open. But question is, where were the best levels that one could have entered off of? So right away, if I'm looking to trade Tesla before the open, I'll look to plot levels like 255, 260, 265, 270, etc. So, just otherwise for right now, I'll plot up to 270. Right there. All right, so here, let's take a look on Bookmap right now. I did hide what happened after the open here a bit. This will load up all in just a second. It's probably going to take a little time at first, but right there. All right, so you could see 260 showed up right now, about 19,000 share sell order at 260. So that's expected. That's an assumed level. It just shows it there, so it confirms the order. But when you kind of zoom out, all right, 260, 255. I will tell you, 256 was a nice little level at first, 257. There are some orders every dollar. It's just to say every $5 I find to be a lot stronger of a price point to watch. So I wouldn't necessarily plot every dollar, even with those orders showing. I'll just go 255, 260, etc. Let me ask us here really quickly, though. Is there a specific spike that sticks out on the column CVP? You go on this column here from top to bottom. Is there anything that really sticks out on that column, CVP? Got some questions from Ryan, which I'll get to in email in just a moment. Sometimes I get stuck in my tangent, get lost in my tangent here as we start Traders Talk, and we'll definitely go through some email questions in just a moment. 258, right? A lot of us saying 258. You go down, I mean, this definitely sticks out like a sore thumb. So clearly there was a lot of volume pent up, like traded from consolidation this morning on Tesla. Could have been from really early, but otherwise just more like from 8 o'clock prior and afterwards here. I would say this could stick out a little bit here, just looking at the delta side, but otherwise 258's your big volume level that's been filled at least across the morning. Now there's volume on the ask at 260. That's your sell resistance right here. Big order on the ask. But as far as like big levels go, big volume from consolidation, there is certainly a lot more volume traded at 258 compared to other prices here. So perhaps specifically at 258, you can keep an eye on for a breakout. I know you could say like maybe like 258.25 little chart level otherwise if you want to be safe and wait for that level to break out at least otherwise. That wouldn't be wrong to think there, for such an expensive stock. Perhaps you give a little bit more slack, but it is just to say there was a lot of volume from 258 there. All right, so Captain Hindsight comment, again, it broke out pretty nicely at the open, but here's something that does stick out to me. Anyone here use dojis? Again, I don't really go through this here in Traders Talk. I do it a lot more on like a one-on-one coaching call. I'll do it in the phase 2 course when we talk about prep in the open, but does anyone follow doji patterns at all? Looking at the open and the close price on the same candle, on the same bar. I don't do it with day trading when it comes to like the 1-minute chart, the 5-minute chart, the 10-minute chart, none of that crap. Simply though, on a long-term chart, there could be a lot of significance behind it, especially if it's like a weekly or a monthly. Here is a daily, but what's interesting to me here is that we have a nice doji, for a $260 stock for the open and the close to be 5 cents off. I'm calling it a doji. So there's some people out there that are like, no, it's not a doji. It's not the same exact. It's a very expensive ticker. So you got to give it tiny slack. That is a very good candle you could use as a doji pattern. Now, what that means is that there's just a lot of hesitation around those prices, 260 and just right there, 260 and 5 cents. So it just simply is to say like that's already a significant price to watch from this morning. We had that iceberg order out there. I'll just draw a line at like 260 and 5 cents right there. Hey, when the market opens up, we end up seeing a big pop. So if this could break over 260, then we could see that make a nice run. Perhaps you'd want to see that become support at first, but man, this just blows the roof right off at 260 initially, and just that's it. So it ends up making a pretty strong run right out the gate. Now, it ends up topping off like around 265, but this is where I could say the more it pushes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, you do want to focus on the cyber clock around 10:15, 10:30 as like potential reversal time. But what that more so means is for as much as a stock moves up and up and up and up and up, the first test of a significant resistance, at least after a stock has already ran up, you got to expect for it to be a head fake or for it to hold perfectly otherwise, meaning, hey, the first crack at 265, pop and drop. Then it was shaking around there a little bit. If you're expecting a higher high later on and look to take it, then this wouldn't be a bad idea to try and jump in on a re-break. But hey, just like we always ask here, when a stock breaks through a big level, what are we getting shortly after? What should we at least be getting shortly after? Ryan already has it. Big move. Well, it doesn't make a big move here. It makes a higher high, but that's like, this is like setting off a firework, looking for a big explosion, grand finale on 4th of July and getting like a dud, getting a sparkler right there. So it ends up making a higher high, but it's disappointing. Comes back down. It's not the right time. And then I do want to check just one thing here pretty quick from this morning on Tesla. Yeah, so here's your 265. It showed up pretty nicely after the market opened up, about like 79, 80,000 shares roughly I saw there. Yep. So the more times it does needle that thread, the more times it does like test that resistance, pin up against it, break over it, it's weakening that level. So you are expecting the real run later on, very similar to my AMC trade that I had from yesterday. Once it broke over that big level again, off and running she went. So same to be said here at 265, but once it failed to run off of it here, it pulls back under it. Resistance should become support. It doesn't, or it tries to and then fails. Well, support then becomes resistance. So over time, it tried on a few occasions but failed. But the more it looks to press that price, I mean, later on, you should expect that higher high, and it ends up breaking above 265 again. When a stock breaks through a big level, what are we getting shortly after? There we go. So it's not just a higher high you're looking for that deems a big move, but given the price of the stock, given how much it's ran up already, or at least the legs that we know it could have, Tesla can make like a $2 move like that. So you could say that on a lot of different trades. Nvidia, obviously, as expensive as it is, AMD, which is a little less expensive than Tesla, on a big level break, why not expect $1? Why not expect a couple dollars on the trade? I mean, the same to be said at 260 just during prime time hours once the market opened up. Why did it not hold support? Well, it's just too strong. It blasted right over it. That was it. Bulls were seemingly in total control, but it's not as surprising because you're expecting a decisive reaction off the level break. Question here would be, actually, really quick. This is flying. Wouldn't shock me if we get 270 by the end of Traders Talk, even the way this looks. I was going to ask, did we get any buying interest at 260 in pre-market or overnight? It doesn't even look it. That's how strong this trade really was, though, because it's more understandable for this to break out and fly if there was already buying interest at the level in pre-market or at the open. But man, this was like just hovering right under it. It didn't break over it. It didn't touch 260. If it did, that would be less surprising to me to see like, oh, wow, the big breakout over it just flew right away. Now at this stage, obviously, with how much it ran up, you're going to see a lot more consolidation, even if this continues to get to 270 later. So you're seeing that here, trying to break a little bit higher right now. Oh, looks like there was an iceberg order here at like 268.51 or 268.50-ish right there. That popped up just suddenly. So yeah, about 120,000 share order just showed up. And he got filled. He got filled. So it ended up breaking through that order. Actually, probably a lot more got filled at market given the size of this dot. So 268.50 becomes a big level on this trade now after this order got filled. So let's just kind of see it play out. Obviously, it just broke over it here, but 268.50, right? That's it. So resistance should become support here. It's going to be a shaky trade just given the price and the volatility as we know Tesla to be. For as much quote unquote buying as we just had there, we should look to A, see a big move, but B, you got to see support hold. If it's not going to hold support right here, then I'd be very careful, at least as far as the top of the ride. It's up 3+%. If that's not going to get flipped into support now, then that's a red flag, at least across the next like 30 minutes, hour, probably a couple hours heading into like the mid-afternoon. So we'll see what happens on this Tesla trade coming up. We'll come back to it. All right, so let's go to email right now. I had a couple questions come in from Ryan, I think from Alex also, and then I want to make sure we just finish up on a couple other trades. All right. Actually, this would be a nice segue, actually, Ryan. So from Ryan, please list the historical levels that act as a top for the PLTR trade that we did today. There we go. So here's what pissed me off with PLTR. I was going to get to this anyway, but I'm happy that Ryan brought me here. It's a nice segue. I got pissed off today on PLTR, and this played out, as you could probably see, pretty flawlessly with where my levels were set. This pulled all the way back down towards this big green line here at 1761. So I believe that was the closing bell print from yesterday on that trade. Yeah, from just yesterday, Monday's close yesterday, 1761, if you see that there in the data box that pops up. So there was a big print that got filled yesterday, PLTR at that price. Right there. 1.35 million share print got filled at 1761. So in terms of big levels, then we know that that's going to be significant to watch for today. 1805 was also a pretty big pre-market level I had in mind this morning, which complemented 18 bucks whole number. So really at the open, we ended up seeing this just pull back and tank. And I was like looking at it for an entry. I was thinking, you know what? It might shake down below the green. It might nip 1750. And I was thinking about jumping in right from there. That was like in my head, real-time moment. I had that in mind. And once I saw this just perfectly bounce right from that 1761 so flawlessly, didn't even sniff under it. I was looking for a big shake under it to like get closer to 50. Just within the first couple minutes, that was. So I thought there was going to be a little bit more room to the downside, and then I was going to jump in. Damn thing was too perfect. Ended up bouncing so nicely. And then from there, just it was just in between my levels for a little while after. So I really had no business on PLTR across the morning after. Moved up higher after, but it was just kind of stuck in between that green and then like 1805 for a little while. Now you could see 1805 becoming a pretty strong support. It has been. There could be a good case to see an entry on from that price right now. That's kind of my tangent there. So let me jump back to Ryan's question about historical levels. So were there any historical levels looking at PLTR long-term chart? Yes, absolutely, actually. And I realized this, Ryan, this morning also, now that I remember it. It wasn't your email that made me think of this, actually. It was just kind of myself thinking like, okay, where are the historicals, actually? I didn't plot it, but watch what I do. Just remember this because I looked at it. I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. This is like too perfect. All right. So you see PLTR dropped off from like the end of 21 into 22. And you can't really use too many levels here, price levels here, unless if it's something that's holding for either like a series of days at a time or like across like a couple instances here over the year. If it's holding really well, that's different. For instance, this could have been a nice level to watch over time. It looked like it was holding right around 1430 pretty nicely here. And then even on a pop and drop occasion, it held it before the pop and drop, and the reaction was pretty harsh, a strong rejection from that price level, and it broke lower. That could be something to keep an eye on. But what I saw, though, is right here, and it was like 1770-ish, 1775, just this stretch of days back from 21, broke under it, right? So I'm not even going to ask you. I'm going to say it myself. It's so simple that I expect every one of us inside our live trading room to really get at this point. When a stock breaks below big support and tanks from it, support should become resistance. And, it is to say that over time, yesterday it was more yesterday's trade, that PLTR ended up moving back on up towards that historical level right here, the 1775, and did a pretty good job at holding it, right? So that was yesterday. Now, what happened today with that price? We'll kind of plot a new level to actually represent that in just a moment. So that's 1850. We'll just kind of move this guy up top here. So that was the 1775 historical level. I'm going to make that purple, just make that easy to kind of see there. There's a lot going on the chart, a lot of different lines. So it's just more or less yesterday's trade, at least, Ryan, not today, but yesterday. At the open, it broke out pretty nicely. It eventually broke higher from the 1750 level. And yeah, it broke over the historical for a bit. But just like we say, the first test of that level, especially after it ran up and up and up and up and up, I would like to think it's going to make that, hold or pop and drop, make a big move shortly after. And by that, I mean like a rejection, a strong break, of that level. And we'll see what happens. So it pulled back under it and dropped off quite a bit. Had a strong gap up this morning. So from yesterday's close into this morning, there was a decent gap up. You would think that over time, if it's going to gap above it, then perhaps resistance could then become support. This morning, I wish I could actually say I had this line plotted. Maybe it would give me more confidence to just lean into this trade here at this point after I missed it from the 1761. But again, I was still thinking it was going to break lower towards here first. Just didn't get it. More or less, it pulled under, shook around a few bars, and eventually, it broke over it, pushed up off of it a little bit. Maybe on a pullback later today, let's say if the markets take a dip back down a little bit, then perhaps that 1775 can get tested again as support just on the way down. All right, so that's like 1775 level run. I don't know what else is like next as far as like the next key resistance. So I don't mind taking the time to check that out at least. Let's see. AMC tanked. I'm happy I got out of that thing break even. Basically, it was a minus like 3. In the grand scheme of things, it's at 990 now. Thing tanked. So, you know what? If it's not going to make that big move I want today, or at least there, get out and run. Maybe it does it later. And if it doesn't do it later, maybe tomorrow. But, that's a day trade. It's not a swing trade recommendation. So, as long as we're not holding on to that any longer than we need to. Yeah, it looks like on the PLTR, though. I mean, okay, so as I recall now, I was going to say there wasn't a real specific price. There isn't a specific price I'm going to plot here that looks really strong. What I will tell you, though, is generally speaking, around 2050-ish to 21, or it's like a 50-cent range between 2050-ish to 21. Nice little bottom, a few points where it dipped down pretty harshly here from COVID, and then just again, like lower or higher low trying here at this point, but just around that area, 2050-ish to 21. And even at this point, it moved up there back in late July, early August. Yeah, it topped off at 2025 or 2024 before pulling back. So, perhaps there could be room for more if this is really strong. PLTR, I think, is like a security, defense, tech stock. It's like a mixture. So there's a lot more to it than I definitely know of on it. But hey, if it has any affiliation with like what's happening in Israel and whatnot, wouldn't shock me to see this make a stronger push up, as maybe they could be labeled as a defense company and see it push up towards that 2050-ish 21 area. All right, so that was one of Ryan's three. Let's just go through the others here pretty quick. Can you demonstrate the best way to set up a stop order when entering a trade that was halted? That's something I definitely do in the phase 2 course, Ryan. We did that back in September, setting stops, taking profits. Basically, what I will tell you here is just if you're in the halt, then you just need to mark out where your key levels are. You can never predict what a halt will exactly do when it reopens up. There are times where it reopens and it gives you plenty of time to manage the trade. Oh, it's like holding support. It's holding support. Oh, it breaks support, stops me out. Oh no. Like there are times where it gives you plenty of time to like figure that out. And then there are times where it just gaps up and then tanks after and gets halted down immediately. There are times where it gaps lower on the reopen and there's like no reaction time for you to use to get out. So it's very situational in terms of the halt. It's something that is more unpredictable. And I don't like unpredictability. So not to dismiss halts altogether. It's to say, though, the more a stock does get halted on the way up, I'm not a fan of it. It's just you got to make sure your levels are marked out, really. Figure out where the opening halt print is when it reopens, because that's basically your key price to watch. Let's see if there's a halt I can try and kind of just use today, maybe. I don't think that we had a halt today. Fausto was saying earlier. All right, PRZO yesterday, I think, or no, PRZO on Friday last week. I see a few chats from Rich in our chat board from Friday last week. That's when PRZO is getting halted. So maybe I could use that, right? Yeah, I could use this, I think. Yep, we could use this. All right, so more or less, it's just one thing I'll mention quickly is that the opening halt print is going to be extremely important for really any halt situation. So, for instance, this popped up at 9:42 on Friday morning, got halted from volatility halt, reopened at 9:47 5 minutes later. Let's get the tape. Let's get the tape. And go back 2 days, I hope. Don't make me look foolish, TradeStation. All right, we can go back. Let's see how far. I might have to like shuffle the deck again here. Probably went back a little too much. That's all right. It's working at least. There we go. So when this reopened up off of its halt, look what we see here. And this is back from Friday last week, on PRZO. Even right now, just like kind of comparing apples to oranges, live right now, as we're talking, there's a 13, 14K iceberg out there, 225. Can I ask you folks, what's a bigger size, 13, 14,000 or 453,100? Because that's what this is. 453,100 or whatever that was, 13, 14,000. What's a bigger size? I think we all know the answer. right? But the reason I emphasize that is because if we're calling some iceberg order big, oh, it's a big level, oh, this is a big iceberg, 10, 11,000, then how significant is this? Tell me, like, how, if you're calling that big on level 3, that 243 or at $2.43, 10,613 shares, that might be big for what's out there on the order book, and you might be correct with calling it big. But if that is big, then exactly how much respect are we giving the 453,100 share halt print? So that's where I could tell you, at least in terms of set and stop, this thing really it opened up pretty quick. Let's see, that was at 134, right? $1.34 when it reopened up. So it ended up reopening up pretty quickly, shook around. You could see it did not hold it as support, did not break higher. As it begins to needle back under the level, you just know it's like, all right, well, if it's not making that big move off the level, maybe it could make it later on, but you don't want to be stuck in this trade as it's shaking back under the level. Might be easy to say looking at the end result, right? But in terms of other trades, even if they didn't get halted, Ryan, even if they didn't get halted, simple to say, but like VSME back from last week, right? I mean, this was a nightmare if you didn't get out ahead of time on this trade. I took like a 10-cent profit or 8-cent, whatever the hell it was, something tiny. I was in from $8, broke out, pulled back on the same candle. It's like, all right, well, I know where that's going. I know I've seen this story before. I know it's happening here, right? So if it's not making that move that you're looking for it to make, it's shaking back under that big 453,000 print. You got to get out. You got to set your stop around there, basically, right? And it's a great question to ask for everyone here, not just Ryan, because I know Ryan's definitely understanding. He's here every week in Traders Talk, always asking questions, and very good questions, might I say, but just always asking questions either way. And it's a good question for anyone to kind of go over because it demonstrates the fact you got to have tight defense on any trade. We got to have zero ego. Like if you get shaken out on a trade and the stock pops back up on you for like 10 minutes later, that happens to the best of us. First off, I don't want to brush it off in that regard, but it does happen to me every day. And it happens to Fausto. And I'm not saying that we're the best. I'm just saying that's a general comment. It happens to the best of us, right? It happens to you. It happens to me. It happens to everyone. It's to say, though, that if you know what you're looking for in an entry and the stock affords you a chance at that same entry, maybe 10 minutes later, maybe an hour later, maybe a couple hours later, like my AMC trade from yesterday, then it gives you a good chance to try and take it and expect that big move shortly after. Look what happened here. Big pullback, right? So if it wasn't going to hold over my 10.11 price here, 10.18 price, whatever that was, big pullback right away after, and that's it. So a PRZO trade, that was just a quick one to kind of address, Ryan. But if you want to shoot me a message on the side where I can go over that with you a little bit more on the phase 2 class back from September, setting stops, taking profits, we covered it there. Demonstrate how to set a stop loss when shorting a stock in TradeStation. I definitely cover that in that class, setting stops, taking profits. Absolutely. And if it's not in that class, we also cover it in our shorting class as well, which I believe we do in phase 1. All right. So some trades that a student had sent over to me, looking to go over, but I actually think that they had meant it for our coaching call, one-on-one coaching call coming up this week tomorrow. So for that student, I'm going to save their questions or save their trades for that call. I think they replied to the Traders Talk question though on it. All right. So I tell you what, I think that we're just about good to go right now. We got our friend Vic traveling right now in Europe, and he's going to come back in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to seeing him. Just shot me a quick email right there. All right, so you know what? We're good on emails right now. I want to make sure that we have enough time at least to go over a couple more trades. PLTR, we'll try and dip back on. The IO and Q trade, we'll jump back to. See what's the market doing right now. Market's just laying flat here, just higher lows, consolidating. Wow, my AMC is rocking right now, or AMD, I'm sorry, my AMD trade rocking right now. So alongside AMC, my dyslexia, I knew was going to trip me up. My AMD is flying right now. So this, I took half my position out earlier on, like before Traders Talk started, just to lock up money. and I could wish I wish I held on to that position. Right now, I'll show you my options platform. Otherwise, geez, this thing is flying. All right, so let me reset my chart. So I ended up taking the 107 calls on AMD earlier this morning, and it was just one of my 2 or 3 stocks I took the time to prep. I can't say that for every single trade that we call out, right? I didn't line up Tesla today, and that flew. I didn't line up IO&Q today, and that flew. So AMD here, this big fan of. So on this trade, it pulled back at the open, and I was initially looking to buy the trade right here at the time. It was like kind of pulling back. It broke right under this. I got a bunch of lines here actually, so I'll try and kind of clear the crap a little bit, but more or less, it ended up breaking under my first support line. This was the closing bell price from Friday last week. Very similar trade to what I said with AMC. So it broke right under it though. Kind of disappointing. I was looking for a trade there and just didn't get it. So I ended up turning my attention over to my AMC trade there. It was moving up pretty nicely. And at the time when it popped up, I thought, okay, we can get a good entry. So I will say I took my first part of the trade here as it was shaking back down. It shook lower at first. So I was down a little bit on the first part of my position. And then when it began to slingshot back up and over the same price again, I just said, okay, higher low was built. If this is going to hold over this price, then we have a real shot, at least for the run up. So on this trade, I ended up getting filled on the first part of my position. It was at 197, then the second half at 210 as far as like the call price. It was the 107 call. So I took it just for the weekly. I'll show you the graph here. So this is the 107. I've had this up on my screen. So basically it's the same chart where it dipped down at first. It ended up pulling back and ended up building support right at this point. So this is where I jumped in on the trade. And then I ended up getting out on the first half of my position before Traders Talk started. It was really as it was kind of pulling back down here. I just took the profit and just took half my trade out. But the second half, I still have. And this is where it already got so close to 110. That could have been a nice take profit right there just to get the hell out pretty close to 110. All right, so I may have to just pull the plug on the second half of this position sooner than later, but this is a nice move up. And I was going to say our next resistance on the stock chart is at 110. Big resistance here right now, about 89,000 shares on the ask. Oh, that was a nice pop up. It got close enough for me to like just pull the plug on the trade, but I wasn't watching at the time. And now it's pulled back just a smidge. So now I'm kind of thinking, okay, does it pull up one more time here and get closer? And do I just get out? I'm going to hang on to the position now at this point. I got to see support now build. A little disappointing. I actually just missed that by like a freaking half second right there. And you might say, oh, just get out right now. Well, I want to see it build support at this stage and get a little closer to this iceberg, and then I'll react. But just for as much as it ran up and up and up and up and up and up, like to see it peak right here, to me, that's pretty darn close to where the sell order is. So would have been nice to like take the profit just as it was running up, like look good like that. We'll see. We'll come back to this trade. Hopefully support continues to build from this point. Let me ask, is anyone in on the AMD trade with me right now? AMD. Brian or maybe Roseanne in the background right now. Any one of us, maybe Gary. Man, this has been a hell of a trade back from Friday last week and then obviously from today. So, it's more expensive, obviously, but you could trade the options on it. Very similar, like you could trade Tesla or, you could do NVIDIA, but obviously the more expensive the equity gets, the premium's going to become more expensive too. So, I have my own threshold. I don't really trade Tesla options as much just because of the price. But you just trade it the same way that I would trade AMD here. It's the same strategy being applied. All right. So what do we got here? Any of us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube? Let me know. And if you're interested in joining us, continuing the conversation with us for today or for this week, scan that QR code on the top left just on the stream. But for Joyce, Brian, John, Brad, Barbara, tripping me up here with their names here, Ryan, Grant, Sydney, and all of us just joining us here. Just let me know if you have any last questions. I actually have one. I forgot actually right here from private chat. I'm sorry, Roberto. Could you explain exactly what a reverse stock split means from Roberto in private chat just before a quick one I just forgot about? Yeah, absolutely. So when a company does a reverse stock split, oftentimes it's not for like a not good reason. They're oftentimes like trying to raise more capital or raise more shares, trying to remain above NASDAQ listing requirements or like NYSE listing requirements, namely. So that's the majority of the reasons why you'll see a stock do a reverse stock split when they fall under $1 and they have a number of days where they look to vote on or like how much they do it for. So there's a process behind it, but a lot of times where you'll see, let's say, well, actually probably on the top of the gainers list here. So SMX, be a nice segue to go over SMX briefly before we finish up traders talk. Not much to really go over, it looks like, on this trade. But you see where it says SMX HBF. F. And F means failed to meet NASDAQ listing requirements or NYSE listing requirements. So that doesn't automatically mean that they are going to do a reverse split tomorrow or they've already voted on one. But typically there's a number of days that they have in which they need to at least get themselves back above NASDAQ listing requirements. So, if that's just to say, get yourself back over $1, oftentimes what a company will do is just do a reverse stock split. So you'll see like a 1 for 10 reverse split, 1 for 20. Now in AMC, I don't think they broke below $1 as for the reason as to why they did a reverse stock split. It was probably just because they were getting too beat up and they just needed to potentially raise capital, right? So with saying that, let me actually go back here and get the timeline right here. When did they exactly do the reverse split, AMC, this last go around? It was a 1 for 10. The reverse split happened on August 24th. At least that's what I'm being told. So, yeah, they were dropping off for a little while before the split happened. But normally when a stock does a reverse stock split, you might get like a pop the morning of it. You might get on like the pre-market chart, little run up, reverse stock split news that came out. It's a pop and drop. It's a pump and dump play. It's going to come crashing back down later on, like they always do. So, A, it's not a swing trade, no matter what. But B, even as a day trade, it's very dangerous because once you're on the top of the roller coaster on the way down and you're not realizing you're in that position, you're on the way down, the drop off, as you see here on AMC, is pretty steep. As much as I was looking for 1055, I mean, even this morning, like before AMC broke out and well, yeah, before AMC really popped here, it was like right around here where I became more interested in it, like around this area. But one of our students, Don, was calling it out, and off the initial pop that it made, I was like, all right, that's something. But like I was super reluctant at first because I know AMC's been that pop and drop stock in the past. And it's coming off that reverse stock split news. So for as much as it pumped up already from Friday last week, from yesterday, it's going to come back down very hard. So whenever that is, as bullish as I am at one point, if I see a lower high and I get stopped out, I'm not shorting it per se right away, but I'm not going to be surprised to see it crash and burn after, right? Same sentiment every time. If that's such a big level that we're seeing the stock trade off of, or if there's a level that we're deeming to be very significant and it hasn't made a big move or reaction off of it yet so far in the day, it's bound to. It's either going to continue its ascent up and move up and run up higher, or this is what we get. So unfortunately, with like the reverse stock split factored in, it ran up pretty nicely back from Friday last week, from yesterday, but this seemingly was the top of the roller coaster here. So once it came back down under this level and failed to hold it as support, made a pretty fast drop. And that's often the case with what a stock does with a reverse stock split. All right, folks, that takes us 12 o'clock. I got a coaching call to one of our students coming up right now. Actually, a couple calls coming up across the afternoon. Want to make sure that I'm timely. So for all of our students here on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., last call, at least for today. If you wanted to get the full rendition of this Traders Talk workshop, all of the recordings, week-long access to our live trading room with our instructors, Fausto himself, make sure that you scan that QR code on the top left of the stream. Also, pardon me, because if you're not as fancy with your phone, not as fancy with your camera, want to join us inside our live trading room, what you could actually do is go right down to the banner on the bottom right there, ctu.co/trial. moving a little faster on the bottom. Probably pop up just in a moment right there again. There you go. Just go right down to that link otherwise, just to sign up for a week-long trial to our live trading room. Our next audio broadcast, though, will be right here at 2:30 Eastern. I'll jump back on the mic, rescan the market, probably not trade AMC, but see what else is out there going into the market close. But otherwise, for students like Brian, Kathleen, Grant, Brad, Charles, Leda, and all of our students right now, probably slow time to be trading right now, but hopefully the market maintains its trend here and hopefully a nice close ahead here for us. So best of luck trading here at this point, folks. I'll be back on later on today. Take care.